You're on your fourth read of the same email. 3 sentences. If someone stopped you right now and asked what it said, you couldn't tell them. So you open a new tab, promise yourself you'll come back in a second, and 40 minutes later, you're not sure where the morning went. It happens in meetings too, the ones you used to sail through. Someone asks a direct question, and for a second, there's nothing there. You know the answer, you knew it an hour ago. It's just not arriving when you need it, and you cover with a line about needing to check your notes. Here's the part you don't say out loud. Last week, you blanked on a colleague's name mid-sentence, someone you've worked next to for 6 years. You had to look up something you used to know cold without thinking, the kind of thing that used to just be there, and the quiet verdict you've handed yourself is simple. This is just what happens now. You're not as sharp as you used to be. Getting older, slowing down. Maybe it's time to accept that this is the new normal. Maybe you've even started leaving yourself little notes you never used to need. A sticky note on the monitor, a reminder app you check 3 times a day, small crutches for a mind you used to trust without thinking about it. But the research on this tells a very different story. What's been chipping away at you at your desk for the last few years isn't decline. It's one of the most carefully built disruptions of human attention that's ever existed in a workplace. And a lot of it was designed by people who understood exactly what they were doing to your focus. Let's start with the explanation you've already accepted, because it deserves a fair hearing. Age. Brains do change over the decades. Processing speed shifts, that part is real, and nobody on this channel is going to pretend it isn't. But here's the problem. The 28-year-old 2 desks over is losing his afternoons to the same fog, rereading the same paragraph, reaching for his phone mid-task without deciding to, sitting in the same meeting you just sat in, unable to pull up a name he knew yesterday. If this were simply your brain running out the clock, he wouldn't be feeling it too, 20 years ahead of schedule. So why can someone with none of your mileage struggle in exactly the same way you do? It's not the calendar, it's the environment both of you are working inside. And that environment did not happen by accident. In 2009, organizational psychologist Sophie Leroy ran a series of experiments where people worked on one task, got pulled onto a second before finishing it, and then had their performance on that second task measured. People who left the first task unfinished did worse on the second one, not because they were still working on the first task, but because part of their mind was still stuck there. She named it attention residue. Here's what that means for your afternoon. Every time you jump from the spreadsheet to the Slack message and back, you don't actually leave the spreadsheet behind. A piece of your working memory stays parked on it, quietly running, using up capacity you needed for the thing sitting in front of you right now. A full inbox doesn't just steal time from you, it takes a piece of you into every task that follows, and you don't get that piece back until the first thing is actually finished. Which explains something that's probably bothered you for a while. You can close a book mid-chapter and walk away without a second thought, close an unfinished task at work, and some part of you keeps working on it anyway, whether you want it to or not. In 2001, psychologists Joshua Rubinstein, David Meyer, and Jeffrey Evans ran a set of experiments asking people to switch back and forth between 2 kinds of tasks, some involving math, some involving sorting shapes by rule. Every single time someone switched, they lost time. Not a little, and not the same amount each time. The cost grew with how complex the task was, and shrank with how familiar it was. Translation: your brain doesn't slide between tasks the way a hand slides between 2 objects on a desk. Each switch requires an actual reconfiguration, your mind quietly changing its own operating rules before it can start the new task properly. You feel that reconfiguration as friction, as a beat of blankness before your thoughts catch up. That beat isn't a sign you're losing your edge. It's the visible cost of a switch that used to happen without you noticing it, back when you weren't asked to make 40 of them before lunch. In 2008, Gloria Mark at UC Irvine tracked knowledge workers through their real workdays, not in a lab, at their actual desks. She found it takes an average of about 23 minutes to fully return to a task after an interruption, and people almost never go straight back. Her data showed they typically drift through 2 other tasks first, which means that quick check of your phone was never quick. The 5 seconds you spent looking is the smallest part of what it cost you. The real cost is the 23 minutes of degraded thinking that follows it, a tax you never see itemized anywhere, quietly deducted from every hour you thought you had. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 2011, Yale researcher Becca Levy followed nearly 400 people for close to 4 decades as part of a long-running aging study. Early on, she measured how negative each person's beliefs were about what getting older does to the mind. Then, she tracked their actual memory performance over the following 38 years. People who held more negative beliefs about aging showed measurably steeper memory decline than people who didn't, even after accounting for other health factors. The belief itself moved the outcome, which means the sentence you've been quietly repeating to yourself, "I'm slowing down, that's just what happens now," was never a neutral description of what's occurring in your head. It may be actively shaping it. You've been handing yourself a diagnosis you never got from a doctor, and your mind has been taking notes. Here's a question almost nobody thinks to ask. Why does a notification feel so hard to ignore, even one you already know isn't important? For most of human history, the ability to instantly redirect attention towards something new, a sound, a shift at the edge of your vision, was the difference between noticing a threat and not noticing it in time. That circuitry is roughly 200,000 years old, and it doesn't know the difference between a rustle in the grass and a red dot on an icon. It just registers. Something changed, look now. It doesn't ask whether the something matters. It never has. The people building the software on your desk know this. In the 1950s, B.F. Skinner ran experiments with pigeons pecking at a lever for food and found something specific. Pigeons rewarded on a predictable schedule pecked steadily and stopped quickly once the rewards ended. Pigeons rewarded on an unpredictable schedule pecked far more and kept pecking long after the rewards stopped coming. The uncertainty itself was doing the work. That principle didn't stay in the lab. The unpredictable ping, the badge that shows up at random rather than on a schedule, the inbox that might have something important in it or might not, all of it runs on the same logic Skinner documented 70 years ago. Justin Rosenstein helped build the Facebook like button in 2007. Years later, after watching what those small, unpredictable jolts did to his own attention, he described them as bright dings of pseudo-pleasure and had his assistant lock his phone so he couldn't download new apps. The man who built it couldn't stop checking it either. That's not a personal failure of willpower on his part, and it isn't one on yours. That's a 200,000-year-old survival instinct, wired up to a system engineered to fire it as often as it possibly can, all day, at your desk, disguised as ordinary work. Now I want to tell you about a study nobody really talks about, because on the surface, it seems to undercut everything I just said. In 2017, researchers at the University of Texas found that simply having your phone within reach, face down, off, untouched, measurably reduced how much mental capacity people had left for a demanding task. Just being near it was enough. The effect was strongest in people who described themselves as most dependent on their phones. In 2022, a separate team tried to repeat that exact experiment and found nothing. No measurable difference between people with their phones nearby and people without. For a moment, that looks like the whole idea falls apart. But when researchers later pooled together dozens of these studies from labs around the world, a fuller picture emerged. The effect is real, but it isn't uniform, and it never was as simple as phone equals distraction in the first place. It shows up strongly in people who feel like they can't function without their phone nearby, and it barely registers in people who don't feel that pull at all, which tells you something more useful than one clean finding ever could. This was never really about the object sitting on the desk. It's about how tightly your attention has been trained to orbit it, and that training looks different from one person to the next, which is exactly why some of your coworkers seem unbothered by the same phone that derails you. There's one more thing I need to tell you, and it might matter more than anything else in this video. Notice the moments you reach for your phone, not because you're waiting on something, but because a thought just got hard. A paragraph that requires real thinking. a problem with no easy next move, a silence in a meeting where you're expected to speak. If your hand moves before your mind has even decided to move it, that's worth paying attention to. It doesn't mean something is broken in you. It can mean your attention has been trained, gradually, over years, to treat difficulty as a signal to leave rather than a signal to stay. Watch too for how you feel in the 10 minutes after you finally put the phone down and try to think clearly. If that gap feels almost uncomfortable, restless, like something is missing even though nothing actually is, that discomfort is information. It's not proof of a disorder. It's evidence of a habit loop that's had years to build itself, one small reward at a time. This isn't a diagnosis, and I'm not qualified to give you one. But if this is happening constantly, to the point where sitting with an unresolved thought feels almost physically uncomfortable, or where a single evening without your phone in reach leaves you noticeably on edge, that's worth a conversation with someone who actually knows your situation, not a video. Your attention is the one resource in your life you cannot buy back. It's the only thing you spend all day long without ever seeing a receipt. So the next time you catch yourself on your fourth read of the same 3 sentences, or blanking in a meeting on a name you've known for years, you'll know what's actually happening. It isn't your brain failing you at 50. It's a piece of software with a research budget behind it, built by people who studied exactly how to pull you away from what you meant to do, layered on top of a 200,000-year-old instinct that never learned the difference between danger and a notification. It was never your discipline. It was never your age. It was the environment, built and tested and refined over 2 decades to be very good at exactly this, running quietly in the background of every single workday you've had since it arrived. That's not a theory. It's what the data actually shows. If this changed how you think about that foggy, slowed down feeling at your desk, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what's the task you keep rereading 3 times before it finally sinks in? Next week, I'm looking at why some people can walk into a loud, chaotic room and focus anyway. And it has almost nothing to do with willpower. It has to do with a difference in how their attention was built, long before either of you ever owned a phone.